Roni, okay, I have a question for you. You know, I'm curious, or it's curiosity, but it's also fascination, no? If you could elaborate on your thinking of opposition, you know, of sameness and distances. And what I think is so amazing to see in this exhibition is a sphere with this work that we're sitting in. Because in a way, you have like in a sphere like this solid black thing, no? But it deals with doubleness. It deals with being neither nor. In this new body of work you are dealing with, it's actually the same for me.
Yeah.
But it's just like the form is such a world in difference.
Exactly. I think part of the reality of my work is that I don't look for visual continuity, or I don't assume there needs to be visual continuity. I think that's kind of a holdover from historical precedent of signature style and this kind of thing, which doesn't work for me. So I think that one of the things that undergirds all of my thinking is paradox. I'm very much drawn to paradox. So things that seem that are on one level quite contradictory, but also holding each other in balance. So they need each other, but they're often in opposition, you know. So that's probably, if you're going to look for something to kind of connect everything together, I think that's in all the work. But the asphere, someone told me once in the when I was showing it that it starts out familiar, and as you spend time with it, it becomes less and less familiar. And I thought that was really kind of opening up a whole new idea of relation, because it's sort of seeking out and it's seeking options, and it's kind of drawn to the unknown, less known, you know. And the asphere is like, okay, people say it's an egg, but it's not an egg, it's not a ball, it's this other thing, you know. So and nobody knows what an asphere is. They don't know that it's one word, right? So in a way, it slips between language, and it has its own presence and way of interacting. So it doesn't center you. You go, you see, you want it to be a ball, right? It's a ball, but it's not a ball because it doesn't feel like a ball. It looks like a ball, but it's not. It's that kind of thing. And you get into the space of presence and instinct. You know, the sensible world. You know, what we sense in things, and that's where a lot of the meaning in my work comes from, you know.
But that's also why you once stated that this is a self-portrait, right?
Yes, I did say that, and I liken that to the idea of androgyny, which is a whole other story, but it's very much a space that I've claimed or entered in my life as a way of moving in the world. And that is that when you have, and the asphere is, it's let's say not a ball, and it's nothing else. So what do you do with that? You know, you have to look to the thing to tell you what it is. So it's that thing, whatever that experience is. So that very much, the idea of androgyny being not the exclusion of identity, like girl, boy, black, white, but the integration of the differences. And that's very much how I've lived my life. So very much in the middle of the road between male and female, and very comfortably so, even if the world wasn't, you know, around me comfortable with that. It was just the way I had to go. So yeah, the asphere is it's a very precise self-portrait.
It's a beautiful one. So so sometimes then it makes sense, because sometimes it's like this shiny metal thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like this black thing that only absorbs light.
Right.
Or no, darkness or light.
Yeah.
But there's also all these elements of materiality.
Yeah, it has this, you know, if you take a quick look at it, you're going to put it in minimalist camp, right? Or you're going to dismiss it in some way, but you're dismissing something that you know nothing about, you know, and that happens a lot. And I'm often criticized formally for things that I didn't make. So, and that's just, what do you do with that? You hope you're dealing with professionals, but often you're not, on that level. And that takes its toll too, because they're propagating misinformation, really, about the work, because they haven't taken the time to look at it or take time with it, And actually, that's another parallel with Asphere, because I'm often disparaged for my appearance in my art reviews, my personal appearance.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's what makes the work good, because it is different.
But nobody knows it's different. Or, you know it's different, right? The artists know it's different. That's more where I have, I feel I've been very well understood by artists that I connect strongly with as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the ones I don't connect with, but, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can look like it's one thing, the Asphere, but it's absolutely a very closely kind of calibrated self-portrait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, when I started, one of the most inspiring art writings was actually Phyllis Gonzalez Torres writing about the goldfield. And I thought it was so beautiful because it was two minds, that was just joined together through this one piece. But the forms and the strategies were so different. And that learned me a lot about this idea of an artist, that became a big inspiration for me to strive for thinking rather than form, Because if we maintain we have to protect our thinking, because there's so much pollution everywhere, And that's the core of an artist's production, the thinking, And how that expresses in form, that's the easy part,
Right?
But the difficult part is to maintain
to have that clarity
thinking.
and capacity for vertical space, I call it vertical because it's like a well, it's a source, it's as opposed to going horizontal, which is just thinning out or spreading out, So.
But then you went crazy during the COVID.
Well, actually, I didn't. The world went crazy, but I was just sitting at home minding my business, and I was, I had been upstate. In a rural area where I have a studio, and I was up there for a couple months, and then on the radio they announced that, it's a pandemic, stay home. Well, I'd been staying home for months, so it didn't make a difference to me, And so really it had no effect at all, right? But what I did feel when I started the work log, because I work in such disparate ways, and I work often without continuity, or like some things take 3 years, some things take 3 months, but nothing takes 1 hour, let's say, or whatever. I just wanted to be in that more immediate time. I needed it for continuity and maybe well-being. So I just thought to myself, why don't I just do some little thing every day, and something from that day, something I noticed or read or a screenshot. It could be anything, a photograph. No limits on that, but it would just be, a letter-sized sheet of paper, and it would go. And I just, had boxes of these by the end time. That was log, right? And that was, 450 sheets of drawings, texts, some of my own writings were done for log. Some quotations. I have this collection of quotations, and I pillaged it. I pulled things out. Images would inspire me to go to certain quotes and things like that. And I wanted those very light and deep connections, and I like the humor that comes out of it, because humor is probably the one thing that I couldn't live without. I think, fuck happiness. I've got humor, So, and that's the way I pretty much run my life. But, that's a whole other thing. But humor is one of the things that's very strong in the red figure now, and absurdity, as well as this really dark stuff. So it's that kind of feel like I was at liberty to go really anywhere, as long as I could keep it to an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper.
Yeah, what I see in it is like these moments in an artist's production, no? That opens door for the future, no? And that's what I like so much about the work, that it, you know, like I wouldn't, you know, like when I look at what I've seen of your former work, this opens doors. No? And that's for me also very inspiring, because I think it's so important that we keep on maintaining the curiosity. You know? That's the thing of opening doors.
You have to fight to keep it that way.
Exactly.
Because, you know, the worst thing that happens as you get on in the arts is the market.
Yeah.
Slaps you in the face and says, don't do that, you know, do that. You know, just by the valuation and stuff. You know, you got to make a living in some way, but at a minimum. But I can't abide that mentality. It just is not for me. So yeah, I'm ready to. I'm not terribly drawn to what money can buy anyway. But sometimes my work is very expensive to produce, so I have to take care that I can do a lot of bad work if necessary that never gets shown. But it's still, you know.
But what I also see, you know, like is a friend of mine said something really beautiful about we didn't came out of the closet in order to be in a box, you know. And I think that has been a method for us to you know, like to not be restrained.
There's no question that my sexuality, which has nothing to do with androgyny, but my sexuality is the source of my options. You know, because I knew, you know, you're not mainstream. I couldn't be, it's not who I am. So since I knew I wasn't desirable, I figured I could do anything. Because once you're desirable, the demands or the assumptions or the expectations override who you are. Yeah. You know, you see it with very beautiful women, you know, how constricted their options become. God forbid they're intelligent. It's a disaster. You know, they have no options, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. You know, when you're really boxed in by other people's expectations or assumptions, that, you know, and people take one look at me and they have no fucking idea to expect. So I'm just like at home that way, you know. I don't have to please anybody, you know. So I'm lucky because I love my solitude. So I don't have to imagine that, oh God, I got to get in a relationship of some kind, or I've got to have a different social context for my older age. None of that is really an issue for me. You know, my whole life has been spent keeping my options open. That, you know, at the drop of a hat, I can run off to wherever I need to go to see whatever I want to see or do whatever I want to do. So, you know, so, it's a little bit like you.
Yeah, that's right.
With your work, I think, is when I look at your work, and I can really only talk about my experience of your work, which is like, I was telling you yesterday, it was this beautiful kind of balance between flowing and flowing through, and this mundane reality that surrounds you, which you embrace, the different levels, whether, in this case, whether you're working with the economy and the politics of a flower shop by immigrant family, you know, what that is and how that gets devalued and cast aside, and how you bring it into kind of the center light and you give it value just by appreciating it, just by enjoying it, and I think that is that kind of very subtle calibration between the things that have no value or are seen as having no value, and this form, which is intended now. In the 21st century, art is like a definition for value in terms of investment. It's the one that's holding up. So it's the opposite of what I grew up on and believed in, because, you know, it has nothing to do with invention. It has nothing to do with who one uniquely is in the world and what it is to be in relationship to everything around you. And that, I feel, one of the things that's very much foregrounded in your work is your relation. It's this flow of relation. And the range in your work, well, thinking about the Guggenheim show and the so-called McNamara works, which is this very beautiful kind of mashup of Western history with, what do you say, quantum time and other histories, you know, even mundane history, you know, like okay, it's a chair, or okay, it's, you know, a mundane thing, but it's also got this very heavy place in the world, you know.
But I think it's all about, like, if form is not the essence of things, no, then what I was trained in is just to look at what we have in front of us. Because if we look long enough, then it changes, no?
My work is predicated on that idea that it's empirical. It's you know, it's not my intentions. I'm not trying to impose. You go in, it's your attention, it's your mind, it's who you are. You know, you come away with nothing. You have to ask yourself, is that you or is that the work? It could be the work occasionally, you know, that could happen, but you know, it's often a question of what the audience is not up to it, frankly. I mean, you see where the audience goes. In general, it goes to a very relatively low level of sensuality, you know, whether it's Disneyland or live nudes, you know.
Or museums. I mean, myself, you know, I know, like, there's very few artworks that I spend a lot of time with, no?
Right.
And especially in our profession, like, because we are so professionalized, no?
Yeah.
It goes like this.
Right.
And that's what we spend, you know.
Yeah.
So I have, like, to train myself a bit better if I'm going to have expected from other people. No?
Right. I remember when I first came to New York, I had a friendship, a very important relationship with Robert Ryman, who I had met in college. He came up as a visiting artist, and subsequently we became friends in New York. And we used to go up to the Met and just pick one thing to go spend our time with, and then leave, you know. Normally, I never go to a museum with anybody because people want to read everything. I don't want to read anything. They want to, you know, stop in front of every work. I don't. I scan the room and pick my connection. You know, I remember I have very strong memories of a show of Danh drawings that just. And this is the Met in the late 70s, and a guard came up to me and asked me to move on because I'd been spending too long in front of one drawing. So, yeah.
And no, but coming back to also your way of thinking, you know, like that your work, it's carried by this undefined thing, no? Which I think is so inspiring, because the problem with works that's boxed in, no? It kills any kind of imagination.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's, when I look at artworks that inspires me, is really these kind of works that you, 10 years later, you see it, and it changes because you have changed. You know, like,
absolutely.
And
it's like I have that experience all the time with my own work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
you should.
what was I doing there?
But you're still an A-sphere.
Yeah, it's still an A-sphere, yeah.